friends. Good to see you once again for Three Card Thursday here. Let me move this keyboard out of the way. We're going to, as usual, have our three card draw for the day in a little bit, but I wanted to talk first a little bit about why these cards have gotten to be so popular over the last few years and last few decades, really. Uh, so when I was growing up, which was a long, long time ago, I grew up in the 1960s, and uh, the cards were really very much a fringe activity back then. Very few people would have even ever seen a tarot deck. Uh, Probably if someone grew up in a family that threw cards, maybe they would have been around cards some, or it might have been an amusement for some people to pick up, especially young people, similar to like a Ouija board or something like that, just kind of on a whim for fun. But people who are serious about the cards, who were messing with them all the time, would have been few and far between. You would have probably found card readers in the major cities, but maybe not even a whole lot of them at the time either. So very much a fringe activity. When Stuart Kaplan, started with U.S. gaming systems in the '60s, and he was importing Marseille decks, it was like a couple thousand a year, something like that back in those days. And then that eventually built up to where, he was selling maybe a couple 100,000 a year by the '70s. And then, of course, the republication of the Rider deck happened, and the cards started to get some traction again. But by 2015, all of a sudden, sales of even the major decks, not even counting the indie decks, but just the major decks in that year were something like 2 million. And the percentage growth was like 30% a year and all of that. So they've gone from being a fringe activity to sort of being a niche activity. Not really mainstream, but at least part of mainstream culture at this point. So what is it about these cards? Why has that happened? What's the attraction? So there are a lot of reasons for that. I'd love to hear what you think, by the way. I've posted a link to a blog post about this, and I'd love your feedback on what you think makes the cards attractive or what has contributed to their increasing popularity. But I'll just share some thoughts that I had. First of all, they're fun. Um, it's not difficult to get started with the cards. You don't even really have to buy a deck, but if you want to buy a deck, you can probably pick up a Rider deck for 15 bucks somewhere. The pain of entry is pretty low, the threshold to get started with the cards, and there's all kinds of resources now. You would have had to learn from someone else. Back in the '60s, there were a few books that had come out, and Kaplan wrote some books then that kind of became, more widely available in the '70s and that sort of thing. But now there's just all of this information everywhere about the cards, and so it's relatively easy to pick them up and to start, turning over a card and hey, let's see, what do we think this means? So it's relatively easy to do. They're relatively accessible, and they are fun. Uh, Whether you are taking them seriously or not, they're fun, and they're fun to collect. There are so many different decks available nowadays. If you just looked at even the Rider Waite Smith style decks, and even from sort of the major publishers, there's a huge variety of those. Some people have to get every single deck and compare them. And if you look for like the walkthrough videos that people have, every new deck that comes out, and then there's all of the indie decks. Some people, will fund every single Kickstarter for a new deck that's coming out, and I've done a couple of those, and that is fun. There's some beautiful artwork. So whether you're a reader or a collector, or just kind of learning about the cards. They're a lot of fun, even if it's not a kind of a serious pursuit, even if it's just sort of an occasional thing. So I think that's contributed it to a certain extent. Um, the joy of learning too. There is so much to learn about these cards, and that appeals to every sort of intellect. So if you're a very analytical person, you're interested in the systems behind the cards. Uh, there's all of that to learn. There's tarot history and lore to learn. There's lots of fascinating personalities that have been involved with these cards over the years in organizations and all that kind of stuff. Um, if you are interested in the art, that's a whole rabbit hole that you can go down as far as the cards are concerned. Um, Card stock finishes. I mean, there are all kinds of details that you can really get into and get interested in about these cards. It's an entree to the esoteric and the occult. Certain systems of the cards, it helps to learn numerology, or it helps to learn astrology, or it helps to learn about alchemy, or it helps to learn the Kabbalah. Kabbalah, I can never pronounce that correctly. Sorry about that. But just all kinds of fascinating, interesting, odd things to learn about the cards. You could spend a lifetime really refining and learning about any one of the systems, whether you're talking about the Tarot de Marseille, or the Rider-Waite-Smith, or the Thoth deck. There's just, it could be anything from a passing fancy to a lifelong study and obsession. So as shallow or as deep as you want to get, I think that's part of the magic of the cards. I have found them to be a huge boon to personal development and growth. It's not uncommon at all now for people to use these cards as part of their daily spiritual practice. Lots and lots of folks do that. Professional counselors and psychologists use these cards in their practice to help people and to help them heal and help them gain insights about themselves. And they're very powerful for that. So that's another reason that a lot of people pick them up. And then there's also such a beautiful community around these cards now. There's so many, there are websites and blogs and YouTube channels and TikTok groups and people on Instagram and Facebook and hashtags and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Sorry for the Wizard of Oz reference, but just lots and lots of online interaction about the cards, and some of the folks that are part of those communities are just delightful to be around and to learn from and to interact with. So there's all of that. And if you really get into it, you might be drawn to a career around the cards. There are a lot more professional readers nowadays than there used to be. Cards are used in creative thinking and development and all of that kind of stuff as well. Collections. I mean, there's just all sorts of things involving these cards. So those are some of the reasons I think people are picking them up. My own story is that it was a complete accident. I had just on a whim gotten a deck and Joan Bunning's book, let's see, 17, 18 years ago now, and it didn't take. I kind of looked at them and was like, well, I'll get to these later and put them in a box. And then just completely by accident on a whim got them out a couple years ago, and they, for some reason, really were interesting to me this time around. And I think that's the experience of a lot of people. So I'd like to hear what you think, and if you're playing with the cards at all, I'd like to know what it is about them that drew you in. So you can either leave a comment on Facebook or on YouTube or on my personal Facebook, or you can go to the weblog and leave a comment if you'd like. Okay. Turn the camera to the table and let's do our 3-card draw. And we're going to look at this week for our 3-carder, what's going on, what we ought to be doing about it, and what's to come. So we'll give these just a little bit more of a shuffle and take just a moment to kind of get our minds still here. And no more Wizard of Oz references, I promise. Shouldn't be hasty about that, I guess. We'll cut these. Okay, what's going on? We have the 7 of Wands. This guy has been pesky. He's been showing up a lot. What should we be doing about it? The Devil. And what's coming up? The 10 of Wands. All right. 2 Wands cards with a major Arcana card in the middle. Wands, of course, the suit of fire, the suit of passion, the suit of the spirit, the suit of the meaning that we find in our lives. Surrounded by this guy, or surrounding this guy, I guess. All right, so what's going on? This card has been coming up a lot lately for me in readings and draws, and this character is holding the high ground. And look at the balance that is required there to hold the high ground, and the intensity on this character's face, with all of these other wands kind of poking up from below. I always say that this card reminds me of whack-a-mole. Like, oh my gosh, there's another one. Got to beat that one back. Oh, no, here comes another one. And just the balance that it takes to deal with all of that. So I think this came up in the Sunday reading as well this last week. So maybe people are still feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Like it's just one thing after another. Too much going on, too much to deal with, too many problems to beat back all at once. Okay. So that's in the position of what's going on. So I think maybe that's prevalent. Wonder if anyone else is relating to that at this moment. For me, in my personal life, I haven't particularly been feeling that, but I think maybe a lot of other people are. So I'd be interested to hear from you whether or not that card is speaking to you as something that's going on in your life right now. Okay, what are we going to do about it? In that position, we've got the Devil card. And this card, for me, it is a very deep card. It is one of the majors in the deck. Fundamentally, I think of the Devil as representing 2 things. The first is enslavement, bondage, whether this is habits or limitations or some sort of restriction that we are either experiencing or feeling, something in our life that is kind of holding us back. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the character that these 2 are chained up to. One of the titles for the Devil in Scripture is the father of lies. So that character in this card is also, to a large degree, about deception. And than about the deceptions that keep us chained to this block, that keep us restricted, that keep us enslaved, that keep us in bondage. The, the stories that we tell ourselves and about the world and about our lives, the stories that others tell us that we believe, the stories that society lays on us that we believe, that hold us back from being who we really are, from expressing the love and the passion and the creativity that is within us, keeps us from being who we really are, keeps us from loving as we should and creating as we should, and um, being happy, well-adjusted, productive human beings. So what are we going to do about it? If we're feeling under siege here, if we're feeling overwhelmed, maybe we should take a look at the stories that we're telling ourselves, or the stuff that other people is laying on us, that is restricting our movement, that is holding us back from kind of getting past all of these and moving forward. And the great thing with this character is that they are keeping to the high ground. They're not getting down in the mud, and they're keeping their balance. So that's another part of this too. But maybe we ought to be looking at, what in this picture is real and what is not. How much of that sense of being overwhelmed is self-imposed, or is imposed on us by the expectations of others that we are just accepting without even really thinking whether or not they're valid. So that's the way I would interpret those two cards. Then we get over here to the Ten of Wands. Tens are about completion, starting a new cycle, or completing an old one, about the harvest, about bringing in the sheaves. But what strikes me about the Ten of Wands card is, and this is another one that's shown up quite a bit lately, is this character is overburdened, bending over under the heavy load of trying to carry all of these wands at once. And so if that is to come, we're fighting back all this stuff here that we're overwhelmed with. We're going to try and peel things back to the truth so that we can get past that. But then we don't want to become overburdened as a result. So travel light, I think, is the advice of this card that is to come. But it may also be telling us that, hey, if you're going to work through some of these issues to get to the truth, to get yourself free, you're going to have to take some stuff on as well. And so maybe that is to come in the near future for some of us as well. Overall, another interesting 3-card spread here for 3-card Thursday. I would love to hear your thoughts either about this spread or how you would read it, your questions about the tarot, any feedback on what I was sharing earlier about the popularity of the tarot and what has brought that about. Any other resources or information that you run across about that, or anything that you'd like to share about that. And would just appreciate hearing from you. So I hope this finds you healthy and in good spirits and safe. And until next time, take care of yourself. We'll see you soon.